We're live.
We are live, yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Daily Sip. You may have caught it wasn't impromptu. Gavin and I did schedule it, but it was an unsort of scheduled Daily Sip, if you like. So if you didn't catch that, do have a look back. With quite a exciting call out for content creators. But we're now back at the normal time, and we're going to be talking all things air travel, which for anyone that's remotely followed me know that I am a travel addict, and this year has been harder for obvious reasons. I've not been on a plane since February, and I'm clucking to travel somewhere eventually. But it's going to be nice just to talk about Geraldine's story in the world of air travel and inclusion, obviously what's going on at the moment, and sort of look to the future. So thank you for joining me, Geraldine.
Thank you for inviting me, Martin.
So I think it's nice to share any personal connection I've got with the guests. So we've known each other a few years now,
Yeah.
and I think the main time that we spoke was when George and I were launching the sort of accessible traveler travel subscription product, and we were making content about different parts of traveling, from research to accommodation to transport, like the whole lot. And we reached out to you because we were aware of the base, I think it was called. Is that
Yeah,
right? The
in
base,
Crawley, yes. Yeah.
in Crawley. And so you were just so open and welcoming for us to come along. You didn't totally know, exactly what we were up to, what we were going to
I
do.
never know what anybody's up to, Martin.
But and obviously we'll go in a bit to what the base is and stuff in a minute. But yeah, we spent a lovely day with you and another family as well, and just got some really nice footage, and obviously just got to know each other and share our passion for inclusive travel routes. So that's how we know each other, and obviously we've done various things since that as well. Heathrow and on and on and on. But yeah, it'd be great for everyone watching just to get a bit of an understanding of your background, like how did you get into inclusive air travel, and yeah, just a bit of your background would be lovely to kick us off.
Oh, okay. Background first, and it's a bit of a strange one. I was working for Virgin Atlantic in the medical team, and my background's chemistry.
Okay.
And I was with Virgin Atlantic for 21 years, and we were looking at buying some new aircraft, and they had a new way of generating oxygen on board. They said, "Oh, it's all chemistry related. You go, Geraldine." So I went, and it was with Airbus, and it was called OBOG, Onboard Oxygen Generator. And it was fine, but it wasn't going to do what we needed. And so I'm in this meeting for buying, purchasing, and fitting out a whole brand new aircraft, really expensive. And in the medical team, we were obviously working closely with special assistants. Our day-to-day bread and butter was helping people with disabilities fly. And I'm going, nobody's talking about anything for access.
Mm.
And so I just stuck my hand up, and this is going, 15, 16 years ago, or maybe even further, 15, 16 years ago when I was at Virgin. And they said, well, no, we'd never really thought about doing that. So they said, well, if you want to do it, you do it. So we started looking into it, and I was quite shocked and horrified. I'd always done voluntary work in the accessibility community, and there was either nothing there, or if it was for access, it was identified H. And I said, what's this H? And that's handicapped. And I'm going, this is not right. And, you didn't have accessible, not wheelchairs, accessible seats. You struggled to get an accessible lavatory. So it was really just banging our drum in the medical team, okay, come on, Virgin, you do all this thing with special assistants, but you need to do something about structure. So it started with chemistry, and then the legislation came in. So I had some extra fire in my belly and some ammunition to say, look, it's not just me saying it. You have to follow what the legislation says now.
Mm-hmm. Was the legislation Equalities Act, or was it a different piece of legislation?
No, the Equalities Act is very good, but it has in there one little get out clause that under the Equalities Act 2010, for the air, it's EC 1107 2006 that applies.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, it was the European legislation. And I think you've had Roberto Castiglione on board. You have, haven't you? I dialed into that one. And
Yeah.
he knows all about EC 1106.
Sure.
So you had the European legislation coming through, and you had the American Part 382 under the Air Carrier Access Act.
Hmm.
So they were about 2006, 2008, 2009. So that's when there was some legislation
Yes. Yeah.
that gave us who were trying to do some things
Hmm.
some ammunition.
The
And now
thing.
you've got, yeah, now you've got other countries like Canada. They recently introduced their ATPDR, which is accessible. Oh dear, that shows my brain's foggy. I can't
All
remember
the
what it stands for
acronyms.
now. Yeah, when you're not doing it every day. But anyway, there's some very good Canadian legislation, very strong Canadian legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it came from chemistry. And then once I got the bit between my teeth, I just carried on.
Cool. It seemed like almost like a spy novel. The chemist who made flying accessible for everyone. It's quite a nice connection from a different discipline to this world,
It,
right?
well, it's not just me. And through what I was doing, though, I met all
Of
these
course,
other
yeah.
people, and I saw on your thing previously earlier on today, people like Mary Doyle, Chris Woods, Rebecca, there's Graham Riss. We've made up our own little network community, all of
Yeah,
us in different ways,
yeah.
banging the drum, saying, we've got to get this right.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point of, on the one side we have our own perspective and strengths, and it's good to play to those bits we're good at, but partnership and collaboration so powerful, particularly when we're trying to change policy and change behaviors. One person or a few people, it's not enough. It's you've got to bring the whole community's voice to the table to try and get that voice to be heard and get change to be made. So it's a good point about that teamwork there.
And meeting people like you as well, the user who've got a passion for advertising and communicating and everything, because then you can take it to the wider community, give it a voice, get other people. Because I always found as well when I was still working at Virgin, they'd say, "Can you do anything?" I said, "Yes, I'll do what I can." But I said, if you, the customer, the passenger, if you get together and raise your voices, they're going to listen more to you than to me. So it's coming at it at 360 degrees.
Yeah. So through the time at Virgin Atlantic, I mean, any sort of big standout moments of, hopefully more positives, but just any, a couple of little anecdotes, or even just generally the kind of what progress you saw happen over those 10 or more
Oh,
years, really.
okay. So about 4 or 5 years after I joined, I went to this meeting and it was like, oh, we're not doing that. So I spent the next 15 years with the others banging the drum. And yeah, there were some amazing things. We did the Invictus Games, which was tremendous. We took them over to Orlando. But little things of Kate Meller. She was severe disability, and we took her and we liaised with the Civil Aviation Authority on that one. First person to take off and land lying down, because we did the risk assessment. Now, I wouldn't say it's necessarily commercially viable because it took so long, and it takes a long time to board somebody on a flat seat. But that was something of breaking the mold.
Yeah.
And then, this was a joy, it wasn't work. We would do familiarisation visits in the rigs at the base at Crawley for the guide dogs. And so they would come and get ready for air travel if they were going to be placed with someone who wanted to travel. And we would learn things as well from people about our blind customers. And it was such fun. We always did it on a Friday, and all the staff loved it. We would then have pet the dogs afterwards, and they were the highlights. But then I mentioned before the seats. Well, by the time I'd left, all our seats were accessible, and we had some amazing ones in premium economy and economy. Business class, not so good. And then I think one of the proudest things I did, because it wasn't my area, but I managed to persuade the company to then do for their employees what they were doing for their passengers. And I said, I know it's not my area, I'm passenger, but we're doing all this great thing for our customers. We need to help our employees with disabilities.
I had Brendan Roach from Business Disability Forum on yesterday, so we were talking about the inclusive workplace stuff. So yeah, it sounds like that became more embraced at Virgin Atlantic as well during your time.
Yeah. And I'm pleased to know that. Obviously I don't know now because everybody is tending not to work in the office, but when I stopped consulting for Virgin February, March this year, because of all the changes, those meetings, the support group, were still going, were happening on a regular basis. And then what was amazing was when the employees got together and they were saying, look, this isn't accessible, actually human resources were listening. And I went in one day and I thought, oh my goodness, they've actually lowered things in the pantry for the people who were wheelchair users.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought, oh yeah, when people suddenly realise what needs doing, they can do it quickly.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. So I think I'm sure there were lots of policies and training initiatives, all the sort of inclusion mechanics, if you like, to get things one way or another improved. But I think the idea and the action that happened in the base was really innovative. Could you talk a little bit more about what the base is and how it helped disabled passengers?
Yes, yeah, and if anybody wants to have a good visual of what I'm about to say, go and look at Martin's things on YouTube of what he's done of the base. If you type in Martin Sibley Virgin Atlantic, some things will come up, and it brought a tear to my eye. I was going, "Oh, that's where I worked for so long." So the base was Virgin Atlantic's training centre at Crawley in Sussex in United Kingdom, and they have the most amazing mock-up aircraft there. And I'm sure you agree, Martin, that once you're in them, it's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm in an aircraft. They're
yeah,
not
it's
aircraft, but you feel like it.
yeah,
And I was just there one day, and this is going back years, and they're used for training crew. And I'd taken a phone call from someone who was really concerned about travelling, and I was trying to explain it, and I realised that even with photographs, you're not putting the picture across. So I said, oh, look, let's see if I can get you to come to Crawley. And they were a wheelchair user. And so they did. And that was probably the first visit, probably going back 12, 13 years.
mm-hmm.
And we said, well, look, come and see what it's like. And then you can assess if air travel is for you or things you need to put in place. And then I realised we got as much from this customer as we were giving them. So I lobbied and said, can we do these visits? So we were doing probably 4 a year at first, and then somebody said, "Oh, well, will you do it for hidden disabilities?" And then they mentioned, "Will you do it with assistance dogs?" So we expanded it, and when I left, we were probably doing 1 to 2 visits a month, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and with it condensed in school holidays, and we flipped from a lot of mobility issues to much more the hidden disability.
Mm.
Because I think there's probably quite a lot more information online now and articles about how to travel with a wheelchair,
Yeah,
which wasn't available back
yeah.
12, 13 years ago. And it was great. And I would say every visit was a positive experience, not just for the customer, but for us as staff, because we always learnt something that we could implement and put into either training or procedure.
Mm. So it was there for the general company, for the training of the staff, and then it turned out in a way it still actually helped train some staff in a sense, or like the feedback you got was
Yeah.
valuable, but it was also to familiarize for the passengers to
Mm-hmm.
to know what will happen on the day that they actually fly. It's
Yeah.
not brand new and maybe as scary as it might have been
Mm-hmm.
otherwise. Yeah.
And then as well, and another one, and it did lead to one of the other things I was proud of when I was at Virgin. Speaking to a customer who was blind who came in to see us, and they had a complaint, and we were going to do the rig visit for them. And then they said, "This isn't right. I cannot access entertainment on your touchscreens." It's
Mm.
like, "Oh no, you can't." And then they showed me. He said, "Look, I can do this on my phone, on my iPad." I was going, "Oh, oh, you can." And because that's not my area of speciality, I thought, "Oh." So I went to our onboard media team and said, "Look, can we somehow get our content accessible on someone's tablet?" Anyway, that wasn't possible. But what we were able to do was adapt the backup tablets we had on board to make them fully accessible.
Mm.
So any film we showed on board, which was either subtitled or had audio description, could be put on the tablet and updated. So it made it at least accessible. So you couldn't do it on the touch screen, and that would have taken too long and would have been incredibly expensive. But a very quick, simple fix within a few months, we could offer accessible in-flight entertainment on every aircraft.
That's amazing. And I think sometimes brands and businesses just see it as really complicated, really expensive, and that's one of the barriers to like moving forward and making adjustments. But as you've just said, it wasn't like overhaul all of the touchscreens and change everything, but there was a very workable solution that didn't cost the earth as well.
And this is another you mentioned earlier today about collaboration. You know, because if you work for a company, you have to try and be hand disability. You can't be aware of everything. You can do your best, but you still miss things. Until I had somebody who had a severe vision impairment show me how they live their life in the real world, I was going, oh, and I never even knew that. So you learn all the time.
Yeah, so true. I mean, Purple Goat's big thing, nothing about us without us, is exactly that. Like, I, as a wheelchair user, don't understand the experience of someone with a vision impairment. So I think it's always about bringing that lived experience in and learning together. I think that's the other. It's not a them and us. I think Roberto said this on his chat. It's not them and us. It's we, and we all work out the solutions together, and that's the perfect example you've just described then. So I mean, that's any other thoughts you've got from that time? Obviously it's going to be quite interesting to, well, first of all, obviously you're not at Virgin Atlantic, so to hear a bit more about what you're doing now, and obviously the C word, the COVID-19 and what's going on. So yeah, I mean, what led you to make a change career-wise?
I had just, and I loved my time at Virgin Atlantic. It was a tremendous company. I've got lots of friends. All I can explain it was, and I loved the work I was doing. But for years, I'd sort of turned down things outside Virgin and not thought about turning them down. And I got to a stage for probably about a year, I was going, oh, I really want to do that. I really want to. And because it didn't fit what Virgin Atlantic were doing, I had to turn it down. So I thought, you know, I'm close to retirement and I want to say yes to these things.
Yeah.
So I thought, no. So and hindsight is an amazing thing. For me, because of COVID, I'm so glad I did it, because I put my life in a place where I could afford to go self-employed, thinking it would be amazing with all these opportunities. And thankfully built up a little cushion of cash, which has been used for other things to get through the COVID pause. But having said that, I mean, there were some amazing things even before COVID hit us, which just shows how big accessibility has grown. So I left Virgin Atlantic August last year.
Yeah.
Had a couple of months.
Sorry? A year then.
Yeah, a year, yes. Had a couple of months break for them, and then they wanted me back in response to something else going on. So I did some consulting work for them. But the amazing thing is, in the industry, it has kicked off so much that I'm sure Roberto or others has talked about this. In June of last year, IATA embraced accessibility at their annual general meeting. So for the first time in IATA's history, they've put accessibility there at the agenda. And then they had the first ever Global Accessibility Symposium in Dubai in November last year. And you've got lots of airports around the world stepping up to the table. They want to increase accessibility at airports. IATA is also doing an awful lot of work on accessibility for airlines and airports. So it was all coming to this amazing crescendo. And I was saying to people, you know, if aviation and if accessibility is your passion, think about it as a career. It's going to be tremendous. And even in this country, we had the aviation strategy, which for the first time ever included accessibility. And then because of COVID, aviation, and there's been lots of people who've been in lots of industries really badly hit, but aviation is one of them. So
yeah, it's been a big
pause.
So yeah, in terms of personal career move, it was for different variety of opportunities, but essentially self-employed and consultancy. And then I mean, moving it into COVID, as you said, it's obviously been a big pause and a lot going on behind the scenes, I'm sure, as to how to make it as safe as possible and alleviate worries. But yeah, equally that with all the quarantines and that, it's just very difficult to overcome, to say the least. But I know Roberto said there were still things going on behind the scenes and conversations, and also I think looking forward, there's potentially behavior change is easier to enact now because all of our behaviors have been changed because of COVID. But what's your sort of take on, as we get out of this, whenever and however that looks? Are you feeling similarly positive?
Oh, yes, but I've had to move my timelines on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Back in February, well, more like early March, middle March, as this was beginning to kick off, and I'd stepped back from Virgin because they were having to change things, but keeping in touch with other people in the industry. I said, oh, yeah, we've been through SARS, we've been through avian flu, we've been through swine flu, a couple of months and that, and, this is a different bug.
Yeah.
And it has hit harder. So I'm sure Roberta talked about the things that have been going on in Europe, because they are looking at maybe amending the European legislation. But why I'm confident for the future for accessible travel is all those big pieces of legislation, the European, the American and the Canadian, they're not going to be mothballed. They are still there, and they're still advocating the rights for people to travel safely, accessibly, and with dignity. And they will start to use their teeth. The other thing, even with COVID going on, is I know Civil Aviation Authority in this country, they've still been visiting airports. So, airports have had to make huge changes, but they're still saying, well, you don't forget people with accessibility needs. And they've been checking that airports have raised their bar up to the standards they need to. There was going to be some new guidelines from the Civil Aviation Authority on airlines. That's probably paused for a bit, but they will come through, because you have to make sure that airlines make it as accessible as possible. But I was thinking about these things, and it all sort of came together. I've been dialing into conferences that are going on. Red Cabin, they're doing some online webinars. IATA have done some. There's been various things online, and although not about accessibility, all of it, people have been saying for anyone traveling, they've got to join up the dots. And that's never, people haven't been aware of that before. They just thought, oh, people just book independently, they just turn up. Nobody's ever had to work.
Chain of events, isn't there?
But if you've got a disability, to ensure you can travel well, like say for you in your wheelchair, everybody in that chain when you travel has to work together.
Yeah.
But your phone on my phone. But they don't do it necessarily for other customers. So my hope is that lessons that airports, airlines, ground handlers, everybody in that environment are learning from COVID is going to help them in the future translate and put some things in place that hopefully will make it easier for customers with disabilities.
Yeah, and that I mean, I sort of, yeah, as you say, I definitely have always come from that user, passenger, travel addict perspective. But then as I got more curious and learned about those different parts of the chain, and I was like, why do I have to keep telling how much my chair weighs to all these different people, and you then piece together that there's actually a lot of different stakeholders involved, and they haven't always joined the dots. So as you say, if they are learning to do so because of COVID, hopefully they'll also embrace that around the accessibility, right?
And there's been some other things that in the early days when the people were talking about distancing on aircraft, for the 2 meter or 1 meter, I know there was a lot of hope that maybe if there was more space in the cabin, it might give the opportunity for having wheelchairs in the cabin.
Yeah.
Great idea, and I still support that, and that's what Chris Woods would like to see in the future. And because I can say things that I really believe in now I'm no longer working for an airline.
Yeah.
But I can see a little bit of pushback from there because people are saying about, oh, it's very expensive and takes a while to retrofit an aircraft, and it does.
Mm.
And of course, people are waiting to see, oh, well, are there other solutions like a vaccine? A really good one I heard of as well, hopefully to the future, for all customers, is antimicrobial equipment in aircraft,
Mm.
which will work for the length of the aircraft. So, which will kill viruses and bacteria. So, I think that's good for all because things we're learning now for COVID, we may have to carry on for
Mm.
any new pandemic that might
Yeah.
come. So that's gone off the topic of accessibility, but I do think there are things that can be done. I am really pleased that IATA are going to do their second accessibility symposium, and that's going to be in October this year, and that's going to be an online event. So if
Mm-hmm.
anyone's really, I don't know any more details than that. I've just seen save the date.
Sure.
The little snippet I've seen, they're hoping to focus it on accessibility in COVID environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that will be really useful to hear what they're saying. I would wish, in a way, though, and I know this is just for one area of the accessibility community, I'd wish there was better guidelines for wheelchair users. Talking to people who I know who are wheelchair users, just of how frantically they've been cleaning their equipment just for going to the shops.
Yeah.
Um, I know, and then some airports are doing it and they're doing extra cleaning, and some airlines are trying, but because there's no guidance worldwide and money's tight, there's a little bit of pushback.
Mm.
So if ICAO or IATA globally, if there could be some consistent process of how a customer's wheelchair is cleaned and repatriated with them safely,
Mm.
I think that would be enhancing the safety for a particular niche market of people with disability.
Yeah, it's in a way they're very two separate points, but then of course they absolutely overlap in different ways. But there's the general things we've been trying to improve and push forward forever and
Mm-hmm.
chipping away and little wins and all the rest of it. And then there is the COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic, and yeah, it's sort of, you know, flights are still going now, right? There are flights and people are going abroad, but it's that fear and unknown of how safe or not safe it is, particularly if you have a health condition and you're perceived to be more susceptible to the virus, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can see there's a sort of how do we alleviate that risk and therefore that fear of the pandemic, but then separately how processes and behaviors will change in a general way that make it all a lot easier. Yeah.
And then on masks as well. Have you seen the information that some airlines and some airports will allow you not to wear a mask if you have a reason
Yeah.
not to?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the mask exemptions have
yeah.
been quite a fireball of a topic, actually. Yeah.
But then you've got a lot of the US carriers who are saying no mask, no fly.
Right.
There's only a few who will let you give a valid reason
Mm.
for not wearing. So there is still this inconsistency in various areas. So it would be lovely because most of air travel is global.
Mm.
If eventually we could get to some global consistency, or at least
Yeah.
better parity, instead of being like this,
Mm.
move a little bit closer with what's being done around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Cool.
Mm.
Got a few comments
Oh,
coming in, a few familiar
there's
faces.
Chris.
Great to see the queen of air travel accessibility on the Daily Sib. You just need Graham Race on and you have the gang of four. Hi, Chris. Good to see you today. And we've got Jonathan saying, one thing I've found with air travel is the lack of communication between the airport assistant staff and the airlines, which is coming back to what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it, Geraldine?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And that is going to, oh yes, he said,
go on,
sadly,
carry
this
on,
is
carry on.
true.
Yeah, yeah.
That is going to vary around the world. You've got some airports who are really trying to do it well. And they're also trying to build it into their contracts of, if you win the contract to provide the assistance service at this airport, you will communicate with everyone along the chain. And I think as well, some of the technology that's coming through may help that in the future. And I'm not going to go into much detail about that because that is not my area of expertise. But when I've been sitting in some of these meetings, some of the apps and technology that some companies want to use, it looks like it may almost do it automatically. And I think you mentioned the Welcome app earlier on today, Neatbox and everything.
When you just said it, that was what jumped out. And Gavin's actually just commented saying if there was an industry that needed an international approach, this is it. But yeah, go on, carry on about Welcome.
So, I know I'm only said that, I don't want to sort of highlight any particular company or product just because I saw it earlier today. But I think as technology is advancing and as people are realizing there is a need for this, I'm hoping that more of these things will be developed, and then hopefully that people work together, that they all talk to each other, because it would be awful if there's an app which works in one country and then doesn't in another. And I'll give you an example. In fact, that still actually happens. There's a huge assistance company at the moment who provides a lot of assistance in different airports around the world, but depending on where they are, they may use different IT systems, and some of that's not down to them. It might be the airport they're communicating with. So yes, to the technology people on there, you bang your drums with the customers to say, come on, let's get some consistency because it's going to help everybody.
I mean, that's a resounding theme of the things you're saying today, is that need for universal guidelines, and maybe regulation starts to become sort of loaded in some context, but that essential universal best practice really, and also with the IT and the communication, it's by its nature, it's a global industry, so you need everyone talking not the same language in the kind of Spanish or English, but the sort of the processes and the IT systems have to all integrate. So I can totally see how that would help. I mean, do you think it's the passengers that are going to help drive that sort of change? Is that one way of it happening?
The passengers, I think, can lobby. I'll give you an example of this, the power of the passenger. Years ago, I was trying to persuade an airport to invest in changing places lavatories. It would really help. Block. And then a passenger got on the bandwagon because they wanted to fly out this airport. And when I met them later, I said, oh my goodness, how did you manage to turn around in basically not much more than 24 hours what I'd been trying 24 months to do? And partly it was from the passenger, but also as well social media. And this customer explained to me, she said, well, I'm in the disability community. It wasn't disabled herself, but a carer. And she said, I don't get out much. And I communicate with a lot of other people who don't get out much. And it was the power of not just that one person on their own, but all of them together that made a change. So yes, customer. But I think there's also a place for us in the industry to learn, to collaborate, to talk about it, conferences, and raise awareness. And understand the possibilities that are there. But back to that thing I said earlier on about, I didn't know about how accessible a tablet could be. It's the swipe of a button, and then you can use. So, keep on learning, and then keep on bringing that to people in the industry to say, look, this is a solution, and also demonstrate to them it's not going to be much effort. It might actually solve some of their problems.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When Purple Goat's core thing is about working with digital influencers to help spread positive messages for brands, that there are brands that have done the work and they have invested real time and money and they've done a really good job, but most disabled people don't even know that's happened. So when I'm pitching and doing proposals to potential clients, there's just often this sort of fear of doing it wrong, and what if one person reacts negatively, and you just have to say, look, that is marketing, that is social media. Like, you're never going to please everyone, but it's not right to just do nothing because you're worried about one or two disgruntled experiences when there's so much good that people need to know. Like the conversations we're seeing of what brands have done, we just need to get it out there. And the key to your point just now is learning that it's never perfect, it's never finished, but it's only by actually having conversations and conferences, and like we're now talking online to people, that's what helps get people to feel more comfortable to try things, even if it doesn't quite be a success in inverted commas, because we learn and we go again, and eventually we find the right answers. But I think we have to get over that fear of failure, because that's part of innovation and disruption, to be honest.
And you have to accept that, if you're in the industry, you can't please everybody, but you can do your damnedest to get it as right as you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes things, obviously I'm talking more from marketing, because that's now where I always talk about the jigsaw puzzle of inclusion. That's the bit I'm more involved in now. But like, there's so much good, so many people need to hear it or want to hear of initiatives and features and products, etc. But like, it's silly to hold that back for fear of one or two people not agreeing. So
and there's what I would say to people in the industry, if you're an airport or an assistance provider or an airline or anyone, shout out about the positive things you're doing.
Exactly.
Don't make it difficult for people to have to try and find that information.
100%. So a few more comments coming in. Sorry, you're gone.
No, I was looking at the comments.
Sorry, Mia, that is so wonderful to have accessibility on the broad agenda. And then she's saying the sad part in COVID is that there are no guidelines issued for travel for people with disabilities right now in terms of safety, etc. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we sort of touched on it, but is there a formal guideline about traveling with a disability relating to COVID?
I looked to find out as much as I could, and if you go on to IATA, the International Air Travel Association website, they've got some guidelines on there. So, okay, they are more for the industry, but then that will give passengers an idea to see what is being recommended. But not every airline subscribes to IATA, and the majority do. I would say, if you've got a particular route you want to go on in a particular airline, do your research. And it's what my husband and I are going to do when we feel we can travel again, when we're going to be able to go to places where we're not going to be quarantined when we get back. Is, and this is purely because of our age and a few underlying health conditions, we're at higher risk than, say, a 30-year-old. We will look and see of what that airport's doing. What that airline's doing, what the other airport's doing, and do a little risk assessment.
And is that on their websites typically? Would an airport website say something like that?
Some airports are saying it, yes.
And the ones that you might want to worry about.
Well, this is what I was going to say. I would advise anyone. It's what I'm going to do myself. If I can't find the answers out, either on the website of the airport or the airline, or if I can't find it by going to their customer contact center or their special assistance team or whatever model they operate, I'll make the choice that I probably don't want to use them. And that's not just because of accessibility in COVID. I'm just thinking at the moment where things are changing so dynamically of, can we go somewhere, can't we? You want to have a company that's doing good communication. Because if you suddenly end up being stuck somewhere, for whatever reason, or have to change your dates of flight to get back, you want to find somebody who's going to be easy to communicate with, whether that's online through an app or over the phone or the web. I just would say that's sensible advice at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's back to your previous point about for brands and businesses and industry to put information out, because people are hungry to understand. They may not have all the answers, but what is going on, what has been changed or done, it makes you just feel more, like you say, more trusting that if something then goes wrong, they're gonna have your back a bit more in a crisis as well.
I mean, I will give one shout out, and I haven't had a chance to look at everybody's website, but if you look at Virgin, because I obviously still stay in touch with them, they've got a video on there talking about what they're doing to help customers at the moment because of COVID. And one thing I liked, and I said, is this after every flight? They're fogging after every flight. So, and I know some airlines are doing enhanced cleaning, but some it's not every flight, some it's at another interval. So that, to me, that from the point of view of the virus, that gives me a slightly better feeling. So then you read about some airlines where customers aren't listening to the advice of the crew because they want to get off first. And I'm going, yeah, that's probably a company or a route that I will choose not to go with at the moment. And I would go with them in the future, but it's just, when we've got not great treatment or not a great vaccine, I'll give them a miss for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So another familiar air travel advocate, Josh.
Yes, Josh.
I'm excited to see the launch of the airline performance measures that we've put in place by the UK CAA to hold them more accountable like they do with airports. And I think this will help continue to drive better changes for accessibility. Shame it's being paused.
I don't know that's definitely been paused. I've just not seen it out there yet in the public domain, and it should have been now. So I'm presuming that will come very shortly once air travel's up and running.
Okay. And we've got Rob says, hi Geraldine.
Yeah, hello Rob.
Do you remember my daughter Yasmin?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Cool. That's a offline conversation maybe. And Gavin, as you're speaking, the lady with the guide dog was just, she's welcome to book a trip to Edinburgh Airport for this afternoon. I will let you know how they get on. Yeah, do let us know, Gavin. It'd be great to hear. Good stuff. Well, that's all the input from the live. Oh, sorry, no, I missed Lee. Have I missed any information regarding special assistance right now during COVID-19 for carry-on assistance? I mean, I think it's been through the whole conversation is that you have to check, but depending where you're flying to, right, Geraldine, and look at the particular parts of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say there's very basic information on the IATA website of guidelines, so you'll know that most airports and airlines will work to those standards. But I know that you've got some airports that are, particularly through the special assistance, are doing different processes than others. I would say the UK ones, because the CAA, are going to be veering on the better side. I can't speak for the rest of the world. So, yeah, I would say check.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, so that's all the live comments. That's everything I was going to ask you. Is there anything else you wanted to say while we're here?
I don't think so. Let me just look at my notes. No, I think we sort of covered everything that I think is going on at the moment. But I just say to people, try and dial into that IATA Global Accessibility Symposium or watch it once it's been recorded. I think that will be useful for all of us.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, and how can people stay in touch with you? I think you're on LinkedIn, aren't you?
I'm on LinkedIn, yes. Yeah. And I've got a miniature website, Accessible Travel Consultancy Limited. Please bear with me if I don't get back straight away, because to manage my anxiety and everything going on, all alerts are switched off.
Yeah.
So I don't get pinged and I have to remember to go into things, but I do always get back to somebody eventually.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Geraldine. As always, lovely to catch up with you.
Lovely to see you again, and well done yet again for everything you're doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. And we'll hopefully have a catch up in person sometime soon.
Yeah. Have a coffee or something.
That'd be
lovely.
Take
care. Bye.
All right. Take care, Geraldine. And thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow, where Chris from Purple Goat's coming on, and we've got a load of updates about all the stuff we've been doing behind the scenes at Purple Goat. So tune in for an update there, and have a lovely, hot, sunny Wednesday. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, Martin.